Thank you all for joining. My name is Luke Elzinga. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Manager at the DMARC Food Pantry Network in Des Moines, and I also serve as the board chair of the Iowa Hunger Coalition. Thanks for being here for IHC's October monthly meetup. I apologize in advance. I'm getting over a cold, and so if my voice is kind of scratchy or I need to mute myself to blow my nose, apologies in advance. Um, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. So thanks again for being here today. We host a monthly meetup every third Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. Always try to kind of share some basic information about IHC for those who might be new to this call or aren't as familiar with the organization. We're a membership-based 501c4 organization. We have a volunteer board of directors, no paid staff members, but we do have a contract lobbyist, John and Cindy Peterson with Peterson Consulting. Cindy's on the call and we'll be sharing a little bit of information with us all in a few minutes. But really what we're about is we use our collective voice to educate and advocate for policies that would eliminate food insecurity and build equitable food systems in our state. Shout out to our dues paying members. Thank you all for the support. These are our organizational members. We also have a bunch of individual members who support the work that we do. So today's agenda for our meeting, we're going to be unveiling our 2024 state legislative agenda. And then we're going to have Cindy share some tips on connecting with legislators leading up to the 2024 session. We've got EJ Wallace with Save the Children Action Network here to share a little bit more about this anti-hunger advocacy summit that's coming up on October 28th. And finally, we'll just be providing some policy and coalition updates. So first things first, unveiling IHC's 2024 legislative agenda. And I also just wanted to provide a little bit of background on how our agenda is created. So at our annual meeting in July, we had folks both in person and online participate in a policy brainstorm. We kind of identified some issues that rose to the top there. And then we put that out to our dues paying members to vote and prioritize those policies. So after that, we had our policy committee kind of go through the language, make some edits, and we just had our board approve this. So our top level items, first, improve the effectiveness of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Second, provide healthy school meals for all. Third, invest in Iowa's local and regional food system infrastructure. And finally, divert wholesome food from landfills to people facing hunger. And these are kind of our top level that was ranked in priority. And then for each of these, we have some specific policy items that were also ranked. So I'm going to get into those. So around improving SNAP, the top ranked priority was reducing barriers to apply and recertify for SNAP benefits, including repealing the asset test, expanding income eligibility to 200% of the federal poverty level. Right now, that is 160% in the state of Iowa. Investing in the Double Up Food Bucks program to incentivize the purchase of fresh fruits and vegetables by SNAP participants. Establishing a $50 minimum benefit for SNAP in Iowa. This is something multiple states have done. The federal minimum benefit is $23 a month right now. And finally, investing in outreach strategies to increase SNAP enrollment and retainment, especially among older adults, non-native English speakers, and other vulnerable populations. Next, under Healthy School Meals for All, the top item is really healthy school meals for all, providing free breakfast and lunch to all schools participating in the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program in the state of Iowa. This next item could probably fall into the other category of investing in local and regional food systems as well. So there's kind of some overlap, but investing in the LFS program to incentivize local food purchases by schools. And finally, ensuring Iowa's participation in the summer EBT program. So one thing that happened at the end of last year was a bill at the federal level that made the summer EBT program a permanent nutrition program. And it's a lot like SNAP in that the federal government will provide 100% of the benefits, but states have to have a 50-50 cost share on the administrative costs. So we want to be sure that Iowa is going to be participating in summer EBT and doing whatever we can to make sure that happens. Our third category, investing in local food infrastructure. We'd like to see state investment in the local food purchasing assistance program to incentivize local food purchases by food banks, food pantries, and other anti-hunger programs, as well as incentivizing local food purchases by early child care centers and senior nutrition programs, investment in cost sharing for local food coordinators and value chain coordinators, and finally, investment in fruit and vegetable processing infrastructure in Iowa. In our last category, food rescue and recovery, we want to make it easier to donate food in Iowa by reviewing the Farm to Food Bank donation tax credit and other laws that may create needless regulations in donating wholesome food, and provide public education on the impact of food waste and recovery efforts. Now, obviously, those are a lot of priorities, and we really need to focus our attention on what we think has the best chance of making movement this upcoming legislative session, and also making sure we're being a bit more narrow with our asks rather than coming to legislators with 15 different items. So thinking about our top priorities and how we can build on both momentum, we've had in the past and potential opportunities in the future. We've kind of had three areas that rose to the top that I think we'll be spending most of our time and energy on. First, a $1 million appropriation for the Double Up Food Bucks program. This has been a top priority to IHC for a few years now. Second, under Healthy School Meals for All, we recognize that while our ultimate goal is healthy school meals for all, there may be some kind of incremental policy changes we could see toward that goal. One of those would be providing free school meals to all Iowans who qualify for reduced price school meals. Last year, Representative Sammy Sheets from Cedar Rapids, who is a Democrat, he drafted a bill and worked to get bipartisan support, had about 20 Republican co-sponsors for House File 575. So again, this would essentially eliminate the reduced price meal categories so that all students who qualified for reduced price would receive it for free. The price tag on this is 1.1 million, and that would expand free meals to around 23,000 low-income students in Iowa. That was the figure last year. We're waiting for some updated figures from the most recent school year. And finally, that state investment to support local food purchases by schools in Iowa, and potentially having this tied to a fruit and vegetable processing bill, which is another of our priorities. So I recognize that was a lot. What questions do people have? And I'm going to stop sharing.
Luke, I think it would be good to know of these, and you answered a couple of these. I know the food bucks is 1 million, but which ones of these that are on our top priority have a cost to the state associated with them? So Double Up Food Bucks is $1 million ask. The free lunch and breakfast meals has a $1.1 million ask. Invest in the local food purchasing. Do we have a price tag on that one?
We don't. So this is one that I've been working with partners at the Iowa Food System Coalition and Iowa's Farmers Union. They're talking with Representative Chad Engels, who is working on a bill around fruit and vegetable processing. And the hope is that we could, as part of that bill, get some funds for local schools to purchase lightly processed, locally grown fresh fruits and vegetables. So I don't think we have a price. There will be a cost there. I don't think we have that quite figured out yet.
Okay.
But yeah, all three of those have a cost. I think they're reasonable. The 1 million for double up, the 1.1 for expanding free meals to 23,000 Iowans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think they're unreasonable, but also we have to recognize, anytime we're asking for money, you know, that's something to be aware of. So,
Right. And anything's better than nothing on the local food purchasing. Whatever they could
correct.
throw into there is a bonus and can only add to that in years to come. Okay,
Good
thanks.
question.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a baseline on lightly processed facilities in the state?
Iowa does not have a fruit and vegetable processor. There's probably people on this call who are more familiar with this history than I am. We used to have Iowa Choice Harvest, which did some. Oh, Giselle, thank you for bailing me out here. Do you want to explain this?
Yeah, I wasn't planning on being on camera, but yes. Um, yeah, so Iowa Choice Harvest was a food hub who did vegetable processing. They froze 5 niche products, local products. And they were a processor and a food hub. And they were around for several years, very successful, sold a lot to schools. Right now, there's some pilots happening around the state. Organic Greens is a food hub in Kelowna, which is currently processing products for schools through the local Food for Schools program, but they're not frozen. So there's a lot of logistical challenges they're working out there, and it's still small scale. But that's one exciting development. There's some other projects that I don't know about, I'm sure, around vegetable processing right now that are smaller scale. But what I can say is that the majority of processed vegetable or that processed produce that comes through the state is coming from a bordering county of Iowa. So it's still allowable under the LFPA and LFS programs that we have going on because the geography is in a bordering county, but it isn't located in the state of Iowa. So that was a really significant percentage of the products that went out to schools last year through the local Food for Schools program was through that processor, just because it was winter months and they're frozen and they're easy to transport. So it is local product, but it's not Iowa based.
Right. Do you happen to
Just a
know
quick
if
follow-up, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wondered, do you know if those food processors on bordering states get some kind of incentive from their states? Do you know what programs are happening?
I know that the LFS and LFPA are paying for the food in full. So that's an incentive from the federal government that's temporary and happening right now. In terms of what it took for them to get going, I don't know the history of that, if there was some kind of state support for that. That's a good question.
Right. And I think to follow up on that, in those counties that border Iowa, what do those state policies look like? And I suppose I could just start digging into that out of curiosity. Okay.
Yeah, in
Good.
Minnesota, it's a very different landscape
Yes.
politically.
Yes, it
And
is.
Wisconsin is different as well, but
Yes, it
Minnesota
is.
has a lot of really great support right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Giselle. And great question, Claudia. Thanks. Any other questions? I will say the policy priorities have been updated on IHC's website as of like half an hour ago. So if you want to look at on the website and read those again, that's where you can find them. So last call for any questions. I mean, you'll have another opportunity at the end of the call, but all right. Well,
I have
Giselle,
just
yes.
one small question. I noticed the word incentive and wanted to ask if that's intentional to say incentive versus subsidy, if that was an intentional choice, and I would understand why it would be.
I didn't like intentionally use that instead of subsidy just because that's how we've been talking about it. So I guess maybe subconsciously, yes.
I think subsidy is more polarizing a word, so I just wanted to, I'm rewiring my own language. So no, I appreciate the priorities. Thanks, Luke.
All right. Well, then I'm gonna share my screen again, and then, well, actually now I am going to turn things over to Cindy Peterson. I'm gonna stop sharing again. Cindy, do you need to share screen?
I sent you that sheet. I was
Okay.
gonna put it into chat, but couldn't get it over there.
I can pull it
Yeah.
up and share my
Okay.
screen.
Perfect.
Works.
Well, as you can see, we have a big list of things to advocate for, all very important topics. John is here, by the way, too, off camera, but you may hear him chime in now and then. But anyway, what's really important right now for you as advocates is to be advocating now, not wait until the session, because basically when the session starts in January, the train has left the station. And we have a good list of things that we want to advocate for next session, but it really starts now. And what each and every one of you can do is to start that advocacy within your own district, region, city, wherever you are. And if you don't know who your legislators are, there's some really simple ways of finding that. And if you go to that link on the sheet here, all you have to do is click on that and enter your address, and your legislators will pop up, similar to what we have here. So this is my district, and my senator is Janet Peterson, and my senator is Janet Peterson, and my representative is Sean Beganowski. So this gives you that information top of hand. It's really important for you to know these people face to face. And the one thing I want to say is they are people just like you and me. They are farmers, they are bankers, they are teachers, they have other jobs, and you are their boss. You vote them into these positions and they want to please you. And now more than any time is important to get to know them, because next year is an election cycle for many of them. And they're going to want to keep your vote. They're going to want to win you over. They're going to want to please you. It's easy for them to tell me, oh, yeah, right, but I haven't heard from anyone in my district on this topic. So it's just you pushing for it. But what I like to see is the legislator, when I go to talk to them, say, oh, yes, I've heard from some of my constituents regarding this. Tell me more. Lobbyists basically are encyclopedias out in the rotunda that help answer questions to legislators. They are approached with, I don't know, 2,000 topics every year, and there's no way anybody can be a subject matter expert on all of those topics. So that's when they come out to the rotunda and seek out the lobbyist that represents that organization to answer questions, to fill them in more on the topic at hand. But alongside with that, they need to know that their constituents care about this as well. So the one thing I'm going to ask you to put on your action item this week is to find out who they are and contact them. You can find out a lot about them by clicking on like her name. And I don't know if this will work if I do it, but if you click on her name, it'll pop up, where she lives, what her district is. There you go. The committees that she's on, bills that she sponsored, amendments, all these things, some that she's floor managing, and that means she is the sponsor of that bill. Because they can weigh in on a lot of bills, but if they're the floor manager, they're the sponsor and they really believe in that legislation and want to get it passed. So these are the bills, are the committees that Janet Peterson is on. This is an appropriations subcommittee. That's a committee. Appropriations would be funding money. So all of our asks require money. So they would have to pass the first committee, meaning probably Health and Human Services. And then from there, if it passes through that committee, it will go to an appropriations committee that will decide, they're holding the big suitcase full of money, and it's their job to turn people away or fund something. And there's only so much money in there. And right now they're bragging that they have billions of dollars. But when the session starts, there's the big pushback. So the earlier we can get into talking to our legislators and let them know why this is important to pull money out of that appropriations is really important. She's on some legislative council committees, boards and commissions. We'll get to that later. Her email address, her business address. Most of them now put the capital. There used to be a time when they put their home address, which was really handy, but that's kind of gone by the wayside because some legislators have had protesters come to their house and protest out in front of their property. And it's just kind of a security thing. So rarely will you find their local home address on there. And usually it's the Capitol phone number. And then it says what their day job is when they're not being a legislator. So this is really important information for you to know who your legislator is. Where are their passions? Where are their skill sets? Where do they work? So going into that, and then there's usually a place here, subscribe to the newsletter. Please subscribe to the newsletter of your legislators. Why that's important is because they will tell you, I'm having a coffee on Friday at Joe's Cafe uptown. Please come see me. And that's when you need to clear your calendar and go see them. It's a very low-key situation. They're usually at a coffee shop or library or somewhere where they come and talk about what's going on, and you have the opportunity to talk back to them about things that are important. Give them the data of the people, in food insecurity in your district. Give them information, tell them why this is important, and you are talking to them with an audience of their constituents. So that's even more important because that legislator is not going to say, well, I don't care about poor people or I don't want to feed people, because everyone's listening. So you've got kind of and you have a great topic here. Who doesn't want to feed Iowans? So those are really good opportunities. And usually they happen during the session. Rarely right now are they doing any of these coffees or meet and greets. Right now they're doing fundraisers. And that's another opportunity that would be in their newsletters. I'm having a fundraiser somewhere, and to show up, give them a $5 check, $10 check, anything, would help. And that helps them remember you. And I've had a lot of legislators say to me, I remember that person who gave me a $10 check because I knew it made a big difference out of their paycheck for them to come and support me. Next year is going to be a campaign year, as I said. Many of them will have a opponent, and they're going to want to prove to you that they are the best person for the job. We can't just rely on the incumbent to keep there. If they're not working for you, then you need to look at their opponent and ask them, how do you feel about this topic? It's important to know, who those people are. So sign up for their newsletters. They send something out during the session every Thursday that kind of gives you a play-by-play of what's happening at the legislature. Okay, so that's finding your legislators. This next link takes you to the committees and schedules. So for instance, Health and Human Services, I clicked on that, and these are all the members in the Senate that belong to Health and Human Services. So you can see if your legislator is part of that committee, and that's an important committee for us, is where most of our bills will probably go through. So it's important to know the chair, Jeff Edler, Mark Costello, and those are, the majority gets 2 positions in leadership in that committee, and the minority leadership gets 1. So Sarah Trone-Garriott is the Democrat in this. If you remember in the past, she beat Jake Chapman, which was the president of the Senate. It was a huge win for Democrats for Sarah to beat him. And she is a very strong proponent for everything that we do. You've probably seen her name in different places, but then these are the other people that are part of that committee. During the session, as things roll on and we tell Luke, flip the switch, we need help, he may send to all of you, contact the members of the Health and Human Services Committee, and that would be all of these. And if you click on them, their email will come up. And all you need to do is cut and paste their emails into the address line. You can do it as a BBC, so it only goes to them, but it's going to everybody, or you can add them all and they'll see that the whole committee is getting it. But those are important ways to keep in connection with your legislators and to know what's going on. There's member photos. You can click on that and see pictures of all of them. The meeting schedules, all this is really important information. Yeah. Bills sponsored by that committee. You can learn a lot by just this one link. But know who your legislator is, know what their day job is, find some kind of relationship with them. If they're a teacher, and you have kids in school, there's something to talk about. Try to find some relationship, and don't hesitate to call them or email them and say, hey, would you like to meet me for coffee? I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what the Hunger Coalition and what we're doing with food banks and pantries in our district, and meet them. It's important for them to do that, is to see what their constituents need. So that's kind of the pre-planning before the session. Please try to take the time to get to know them, to meet them. So when the session does start, it's on their radar screen. So when Luke and I and John go up there and start talking about Double Up Food Bucks, they already know about it. Oh, I've heard 12 people in my district contact me about this. Those contacts are really, really, really important for them to know. So, and then when the session starts, then that's when more advocating starts happening. So as we see these bills come through, and as they're going through the process, that's where you might need to contact them again via email or text. If you get their cell phone number, that's the best, because then you can text them. They sometimes glaze over emails if they start to get a lot of them. But if you have their text number, your cell phone number, you can text them and say, hey, support House File 575 or whatever it is. And that gets, a little bit more attention. So anybody have questions? I kind of skimmed through a lot, but take some time to go through that website and click on those links of your legislators and find out more about them. Try to get a face-to-face with them before January, even if it's just for a few minutes at the coffee shop, at the library, wherever it's convenient for them and you. That would be a real bonus. Anybody have questions? And have you done this before? How many of you know your legislator?
I just had a question.
Okay,
Sorry, Claudia. Loved your question earlier too, by the way. Just had a question about any communication. Luke, at some point in the last 6 months, I think it's been, you suggested doing an op-ed and just doing an opinion piece for our local newspapers. Do we have any archived efforts on that front that we could reference to kind of know what to say, what to what our visual is collectively on this. Thank you.
We have some past pretty specific examples. I'm not sure that we have any, just general support for double up food bucks or things like that, but that's definitely something we can be working on. So I'm gonna make a note of that.
And when you do communicate with them, it doesn't have to be pages and pages and long and data, because they'll glaze over that and they won't look through the whole thing. Bullet points are good, short, concise, to the point. If you have any questions, please follow up with me. But bullet points are really, really good. And they don't like form letters. So if they see form letters, they just delete them. Hopefully they're counting them so they know how many people are interested, but they don't like form letters. And if you're sending them something, I'm so-and-so, I'm Megan Brink from so-and-so place, and I work for this place, and I am really interested in this. I'm one of your constituents. Those are the first paragraph you should say, who you are, where you work, I'm one of your constituents, and then go into the bullet points and say, this is really important for our district. You could throw a few data points in there, but don't bombard them with pages of charts and graphs and that kind of information.
Thank you, Cindy.
I'll mention something after Claudia goes, because Claudia's been waiting.
Oh, okay, thanks. Quick question. I work among some wonderful folks in a local food pantry, and I've been sharing about double up food bucks because it's something I can wrap my own brain around and share with others, so they're familiar with this idea. I'm also aware of what's available here in the Quad Cities, which is limited. So if I were to share with my fellow volunteers at the food pantry about this very critical time to reach out, that makes sense to me, that would be the one point I could land on. And Cindy, you're nodding, so that's the answer to my question. Thank you.
Yep, that's great.
Okay.
That's the grassroots part of this is kind of the
Yes.
phone tree, and you guys spread out. Yes, very
Yeah.
good.
Thank you so much.
One thing I would add too, if this is kind of maybe taking things to the next level after you meet with them in person or something, but it's always great to invite them to your site. If you're a food pantry, if you are a school, that in-person meeting is a great time to extend an invitation, or even when you're first reaching out to them, ask them if they'd be willing to come to your office or to the food pantry and see what you're doing firsthand, because I think that really helps, form that connection and memory with them as well. Giselle, you've got your hand up, and then EJ, I wasn't sure if you were going to share something too, but Giselle, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add onto what you said, Claudia, is if you have a pantry, if you're in the Quad Cities, if you want specific data points as well for LFPA and LFS programs, we have every single site and every single vendor who is serving that area that I could look up for you and share. So you being able to invite them to a pantry, you being able to share the stories is really, really impactful. And if you want some data to go along with that, you could reach out to me and I'd be happy to provide some of that too. I just talked to Anne at Tapestry Farm, who works with the food banks and immigrant and refugee farmers in Davenport. And so there are cool things happening. And I think if they can see the positive examples, that'll help as well.
That would be awesome. I will reach out. Thank you.
Stories are great because it makes it real. And yeah, anytime you can throw a story in there, great suggestion, Giselle.
Can I throw out a comment? May I throw out a comment? The School Nutrition Association of Iowa just put out their Flash magazine, and they are currently asking for proposals for presentations for our conference, which will be June 18th through the 20th of 2024. And Luke and I met sometimes recently, was it this week, last week? But on the front of food waste and associated with school meals, because we're hearing this as a concern for many of the legislators. And it seems that we have an opportunity for improvement in that area. We've asked for more information about share tables, which are available to students, and what limitations there are beyond that. And we've also asked for any relevant resources that the Iowa Department of Education Bureau of Nutrition and Health Services has available on that front as well. So pending more information, and also just throughout to the Department of Ed as well, that if they have champions in that area that would like to speak, we would love to learn best practices and what positives they've seen with that. So throwing that out here as well. Hey, Caitlin. If there's others that can contribute to that or would be interested in presenting on that, we welcome the opportunity. Thank you.
Megan, that's great on the share tables, and many of you could contact your local schools and ask if they implement that. And if you don't know what that is, it's if a child's not going to eat something, there's a table they can go put it on and another child can come take that. So that's really a great opportunity. But you as an advocate could also check within your own district. Do your schools do that?
Could you share in any link or any information in the chat, just if people are interested in that? All right. I want to be mindful of time. We've got about 20 minutes left, so we can come back to questions maybe at the end, but right now I want to turn things over to EJ Wallace with Save the Children Action Network to talk a little bit about, bear with me here while I get this going, the Anti-Hunger Advocacy Summit later this month. So EJ, take it away, and I can stop sharing or keep this up. Just let me know.
It doesn't matter. I think it's good to have the information there. If you want to drop the link to register in the chat, Luke, while I'm speaking, that would be great. So
Yep.
Save the Children Action Network exists as the advocacy arm of Save the Children, that over 100-year old organization that protects the rights of children. And it exists to build bipartisan support to make sure every child has a strong start in life. So we're doing this by advocating for high quality early learning and ending child hunger in the US and educating and protecting kids around the world. So SCAN has been ramping up our efforts to end child hunger since the pandemic, which is included in the lead up to our campaign to advocate for a better farm bill. We commissioned a poll from a bipartisan team to assess voters' levels of support for strengthening and expanding SNAP. And that's relatively recent. So we're hoping to use that when we talk to lawmakers, Cindy. So I'll make sure that that link is in the chat so that everybody here can have access to those findings. We also did some polling, bipartisan polling for rural and small town voters earlier this year. And that study found that rural voters nationally are facing many challenges, including concerns about hunger and accessing childcare. So these are definitely issues that are very connected with us. I've had the privilege of working closer and closer with DMARC over the years. I've known Luke for a long time. We were both in the young nonprofit professionals network early on when we were looking to start our careers. So I'm really excited to be able to partner with DMARC now for our annual advocacy summit. So the Iowa State Advocacy Summit is an annual event, and it brings together advocates from across the state for a tailored advocacy experience. We're excited to bring this back since the pandemic, and the experience will include special speakers, expert panels, and fun team building activities and skills trainings. So Megan, when I was putting in the chat, for instance, we're going to have a training on how to talk to press and write letters to the editor. We're also going to have a training on how to talk to candidates on the campaign trail, Cindy, and that is going to be an opportunity for you to learn how to approach a candidate from an expert that's had over 100 engagements with candidates as a volunteer under her belt, and she's going to be leading this. I'm really excited for Tiffany to lead that. And this year, Save the Children Action Network and DMARC are teaming up to help anti-hunger and early learning advocates level up their skills to be a strong presence in the community. So this is going to be a great opportunity for you to learn how a bill becomes a law through trick-or-treating. And then we're going to hear from an expert. Our keynote is the Food Bank Association of Santa Barbara. Is that right, Luke? Thank you. Of Santa Barbara, Eric Tolkien. He's also a published children's author. These trainings, unfortunately, will not be recorded, Claudia, because we will have panels that will include lawmakers, and we want to make sure that they're candid. If we record them, they're going to talk like they're on camera. We don't want them to do that. We want them to actually have a conversation. Same thing with Mr. Tolkien. You know, he's a speaker. However, you can find all kinds of information on how to do these things, like writing letters to the editor and speaking to press on our social media channels, or looking up SaveTheChildrenActionNetwork.org, or reach out to me to learn about how to be a volunteer or bring our trainings to your group or organization or next event. Any questions? Any comments about the summit? It's going to be at the United Way of Central Iowa campus. It's going to be at their event center. So really, you go in the front door and it's right there around the back. But it's going to be only from 9 to 2. So it's not even the full day, but we're going to try to pack as much as we can in there, make sure that people have a good time. My goal, because we've had advocacy summits across the country, as part of the 13 states that we have staff in, my goal is for Iowa to be the funnest summit. So please come and help make that happen.
Thanks, EJ. And correct me if I'm wrong, the registration deadline is this Friday. Is that right?
That's right. Registration is due by this Friday, and that's because we're going to have food catered. So just want to make sure, and just so everybody is for sure, this is free. We have a budget that we raise for these advocacy summits. This is something we're putting on for the community, and our hope is that people will take the knowledge, get involved in SCAN if you want to, but really just be a strong advocate for children in your community, especially as we ramp up. This is an election year, and we want to make sure that hunger fighters are out ready to go when it comes to passing legislation and speaking to candidates.
Thank you so much, EJ. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, just to add on to that, you know, this is a great opportunity if you're like somebody within your organization where you're really bearing the brunt of a lot of this work when it comes to advocacy, to invite somebody in, a board member, another staff member, somebody who like they just don't have the tools right now or the bridge to understanding to get a better sense of how to get involved with this space. So just, you know, throwing that out there when you're thinking about attendance.
Yeah, thank you, Blake. And EJ, if you haven't already, maybe you could just drop your email in the chat for folks if they need to reach out. All right, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I just have a few updates, and then we always try to end with kind of a community discussion question. So 1 second here. All right, so a few updates. Farm Bill and federal update. If you're not aware, things are at a bit of a standstill until the House elects a speaker. I think that's happening right now. So correct me if I'm wrong. We might have a speaker of the House right now. I don't know. I doubt it. The Farm Bill has expired after failing to pass before the September 30 deadline. So certain programs have already expired. Others, the Ag Chair has kind of said the kind of drop dead date is December 31 before other programs will begin to expire. I want to underscore the fact that SNAP benefits are safe. It's a permanent program. If we don't see a Farm Bill reauthorized, SNAP benefits are safe. And the Farm Bill. We, recently averted a government shutdown, which kind of led to this whole speaker battle. And the continuing resolution that was passed runs through November 17th. Now, if we don't have a continuing resolution or an ag appropriations bill passed, SNAP benefits could be at risk in this regard. The USDA has already said if we do have a shutdown in November, SNAP benefits are safe for December. But if we see a protracted shutdown, January's benefits could potentially be at risk. They might send them out early, like we saw in the government shutdown of 2018 and 2019. Obviously, we will be keeping you up to date on everything there. But just wanted to provide a little context on that. Also, once we do have a Speaker of the House and bills start coming to the floor, these spending bills will be top priority. And then I think Farm Bill is going to kind of take next priority after they get that all sorted out. SNAP updates for Iowa. September's SNAP numbers are out today. Those have been already updated on the Iowa Hunger Coalition SNAP Map tool. I will say that's another tool you can use when you're reaching out to a legislator in your district. Maybe visit that SNAP map, see what the stats are like for your county. Unfortunately, we can't break that down based on Senate and House districts for the state legislature because those don't neatly follow county boundaries. But you can at least share some information about the county or counties that they represent and have the most up-to-date SNAP information there. Also wanted to share cost of living adjustments for SNAP took effect in October 2023. It was a very modest increase. The minimum benefit didn't change. So folks have a bit more in benefits, not a great deal this year. And then finally, I think we brought this up before, but again, wanting to share the 3-month time limit, also known as work requirements for able-bodied adults without dependents, which the definition has been expanded to now that is anyone 18 to 52, and we'll see that go up to 54 next year. Those will resume in Iowa in December. Then we kind of expect that the impact we'll see from that will begin in March 2024 as people have expended that 3-month time limit. And again, this is a requirement that those people who fall under this category of able-bodied adults without dependents need to be working at least 20 hours a week or volunteering or participating in a job training program. When the federal government made those changes that increased the age, there were also some new exemptions that were added for people who are unhoused, veterans, and young adults exiting the foster care system. So that's youth 18 through 24 who've aged out of the foster care system. So while that age was increased, we also did see some new exemptions. So that's another thing to be aware of. Updates on Healthy School Meals for All. I'm excited to share that Iowa is forming a Healthy School Meals for All coalition. So expect to see more news from this in the coming weeks. Meg and Caitlin, who've been on this call, have been part of that. So expect to see more from us kind of in the coming weeks about how you can get involved with that. And obviously the Hunger Coalition is a part of that coalition. And I also wanted to share that USDA announced a new rule to allow schools. Previously, the kind of cutoff for being able to apply for community eligibility provision was you needed at least 40% of your students receiving free or reduced price lunch or meals. That has been lowered to 25%. So that's expanded that opportunity for more schools. But my understanding and talking with folks like Meg and Caitlin is that without an increase to the reimbursement rate, that the community eligibility provision still not financially viable for many schools. So Meg or Caitlin, I don't know if you wanted to share more about kind of where schools really need to fall in terms of their percentage of students to actually make that financially viable? Or maybe you could answer any
Yeah.
questions in the chat. But yeah, Caitlin.
So it's an increase to the what's called the multiplier. It's part of the formula of how they determine if you're eligible for CEP and that sort of thing. But most schools, it's around, they would need to have more like 50 to 60% of their students be and in their identified student percentage to make CEP financially viable. So even though like the percentage was 40% prior, most schools at 40% still wouldn't participate in CEP because it's not high enough to get that reimbursement that they need. So the way CEP works, and Meg, you can add to this if you know anything else too, is that when you're getting reimbursed, you're getting reimbursed for that 40% of students at the free rate, which is the highest reimbursement rate. Reduced price, you get a little bit less from the federal government, and paid students, you get very little from the federal government as far as reimbursement. So essentially, you have to rely, that's why you need 50 or 60%, because when you're being reimbursed for 50 to 60% of your students, that makes it a little more financially viable than it would if you're at a lower percentage. So the multiplier plays into that too. And we don't participate in CEP in our district. So I'm not super familiar with that, but if anyone has questions, we could try to answer.
Thank you, Caitlin. And yeah, the multiplier. I'm still learning a lot about National School Lunch Program and school lunch policies. So thank you, Caitlin and Meg, for being here to help with that. And there is a bill. Sorry, go ahead, Meg.
I think it's complicated for a reason, but essentially, so at the multiplier right now is 1.6, and there has been bills proposed to increase the multiplier to 2.5 that didn't move forward. But at a 1.6 multiplier, that means that with the identified student percentage based on direct certification reduced to 25%, 25 times 1.6 puts us at 40%. So 40% of the students would be reimbursed at the free federal reimbursement rate, and 60% of students, if 100% of students chose to eat, would be reimbursed at the paid federal reimbursement rate. So that's why it's not financially viable for most schools.
Yeah, thank you, Meg. And if you have any questions about school meals, I'm just gonna point you to Meg and Caitlin because they are the experts I've been relying on. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to them. I hope that's okay, Meg and Caitlin. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
I
we have
have
a very.
one.
Oh yes, go ahead, Giselle.
Sorry to interrupt, Luke. I do have one for Caitlin and Meg. I think it would be super helpful. Teresa Weimerslage always is like, I'm an examples person. Just to like see an example of what that really feels like for you with your budget of like, okay, I have 100 students I need to feed, and my budget is usually like this much per meal. If it's 40% or 60, just like putting some numbers to it, that would help me. I'm not as good at mental math, so just to paint the picture of what your very wonky and challenging lives are like in needing to find the budget to make sure that kids get fed every day.
Love that suggestion, and it's probably going to end up in our white paper. Thanks, Giselle.
Awesome, thanks.
All right, we got like 3 minutes left, so I apologize. We had more to discuss this meeting than some of our previous ones. We always try to have one kind of discussion question to leave the group with. And maybe just thought, I was thinking maybe we could share just what you might be planning on, at a food pantry, your organization, to provide any additional assistance during the winter holidays, if at all, and if that's changed this year over a prior year. But I'm going to stop sharing and open the floor if you want to put it in the chat. Like I said, we've got like 3 minutes, so Not a ton of time, but please go ahead.
Our food pantry usually gives out $25 gift cards from Fairway. We used to give out a set thing for Thanksgiving or Christmas. You could do one or the other. But so many of the people didn't use meat, or because of the diverse population, they wanted lamb or something unusual that we didn't have. So they found that was the best thing instead of giving them stuff they don't want. So.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Randy. Claudia shared tracking down local fruit and veg to offer folks. Question about how the roundtable discussions are going. Thank you, Jill. This is something that we've been hosting with the Iowa Food System Coalition, this kind of roundtable series. We've held 2 so far. We held one in Grinnell, and we held one in Waterloo. We had good attendance at both of those. I'd say the Grinnell event definitely skewed toward more people with lived experience. We had kind of organized it around an existing community meal already. The Waterloo event, I think, was more service providers, and we had a number of farmers there as well. So a little bit different audience at each of those, but it was kind of remarkable how similar the topics came up. So we had one scheduled in Spencer. We've rescheduled that. I think it's going to be in December. We're actually looking at a weekday because we didn't get the kind of registrations. We had hoped for a Saturday and heard that a weekday might work better for folks. So that's something we're working on rescheduling. But I think those have been going well. We're hearing from people that it seems like we're on the right track with the policies we're working towards. So thank you for that question. Another thing I didn't mention too is that we continue to have a Senate File 494 implementation work group that's monitoring the implementation of Senate File 494. Don't really have any updates right now on that, but just wanted everyone on this call to be aware of that. So if there's not any other questions, just want to thank you all for being here. I'm going to stop recording. We will send out this recording. Feel free to share this with anyone else. And thank you all for your time and for being here.